Hey, Camp Sanguinity, it's Counselor Layne here, and I am very excited to share a book with you that you can also find and read along in your camper box. You may or may not know, but there are groups of stars in the sky called constellations. And today, with the help of this book, you are going to learn how to discover even more in the night sky than what you've previously seen before. So let's not hesitate or waste any time and jump right in to Glow in the Dark Constellations, a field guide for young stargazers. This book was written by C.E. Thompson and illustrated by Randy Tuning. And if you go to a dark spot to read, the pictures will even glow in the dark. Pretty cool. Now, I was going to try to find a spot in the dark to read, but then you wouldn't have been able to see me or the book. So let's jump in. Here we go. The first thing that I noticed in this book are some different maps. That's pretty amazing. Wonder why there needs to be different maps to show different versions of the sky. What do you think about that? Constellations, an introduction to stargazing. If you look up into the sky on a clear night, you will be able to see glowing planets and twinkling stars. On some nights, you will see the moon, and if you are lucky, you may see a meteor or a shooting star as it scoots across the sky. Have you ever seen one of those before? I know that living in the Metroplex, sometimes it can be challenging to get away from the city lights, and that's always something I look forward to going out to camp to be able to see all of the stars. But we're going to learn some different ways that with your own eyes, you might be able to see some of these things. You will be able to see more if you use a telescope or a pair of binoculars. But even with just your own eyes, there is plenty to see in the night sky. This book will show you how to find several well-known groups of stars or constellations. A group of stars are called constellations. It will also help you learn the shapes of the constellations and their names. Just like I have a name and you have a name, these groups of stars have names as well. Well, who named the constellations? Thousands of years ago, stargazers, people who gaze and look at the stars, like you and I do. Stargazers noticed that some groups of stars seem to form patterns in the sky. If you use your imagination, you may be able to see the shape of a water dipper or soup ladle in one of the groups of stars. Early stargazers imagined that some of these constellations formed shapes that looked like people or animals. The Greeks and Romans named the constellations after the heroes in the stories of their gods and goddesses. Even though the shape of each constellation does not look exactly like the person or animal it's named for, the names of the constellations were passed on from generation to generation, and we still use those names today. So if we look here at the examples, you may or may not have seen, oh, sorry, the virtual background is all blurry. There we go. You may or may not have seen the Big Dipper before. Have you ever looked up into the sky and found a group of stars that looks like a dipper or something that you could dip out soup or maybe even punch? I have too. But if you've never seen the Big Dipper before, we're going to keep reading and find out some tips later in this book. But first, let's learn, what is a star? What are those objects in the sky? A star is a ball of hot, glowing gases. The sun is a star, the closest one to Earth. Believe it or not, the sun is actually the closest star to the Earth. And it looks really, really big, right? But it's not as big. It's just because it's so close to the Earth, even though it's very far away from us. All the other stars are much farther away. The sun is about 93 million miles away from Earth. After the sun, the nearest star is almost 26 trillion miles away. Goodness, that's a huge number. There are stars in the sky during the day, but we can't see them because the sky is too light. When the sun sets and the sky gets darker, the other stars seem to come out. But there are always stars in the sky, whether we can see them or not. How bright a star looks depends on how much light it gives off and how near it is to Earth. The brightest star in the night sky is Sirius. It can be seen in winter near the constellation Orion. So let's think about that right now. If we go outside tonight, will we be able to see that brightest star in the sky, Sirius? No, we won't be able to see that because the season is not winter. Right now, the season is summer, and so that would not be something that we would find in our current sky. So, how do we know where to look to find a certain constellation? Astronomers, or scientists who study the stars, know that constellations seem to move in the same paths across the sky night after night, year after year. We all know from experience that the sun rises in the eastern sky every morning and sets in the western sky every night. Astronomers know from experience when a constellation will rise and when it will set, similar to the sun. They have drawn maps of the sky to show us when and where to look when we want to find certain stars. The sky maps at the front and back of this book. So remember, there's maps at the front, but there's also maps in the back. So those maps that you can find in the front and back of your book will show you which constellations you can see in the early evening during each season of the year. So we discussed that this season right now that we're in during camp is summer. So we'll find those maps in the back of the book. So you can turn to the back of your book and you'll be able to find the northern sky in the summer, which means that you would need to face north. Sometimes that can feel a little confusing to figure out which way is north, east, south, and west. And we've got some tools that will be able to help you with that. You can also find the southern sky map in the summer at the bottom of the page. So there are different constellations that you can find in the sky this evening. So you may be wondering, why can I see some constellations in some seasons, but not see them in the other seasons? Well, great news. There's information about that in our book. Why do we see different constellations in the sky at different times of year? The sun and the stars seem to move across the sky, but they really are not moving. We are. I bet a lot of you have already learned that in school. The earth is always spinning around like a top, and at the same time, it's moving its path around the sun. It takes 1 year for the earth to travel around the sun. As the year goes on and on, the earth's position changes. The early evening positions of the constellations change too. Some constellations, such as Orion, rise and set and can be seen only part of the year. Other constellations, such as the Big Dipper, can be seen all year, but their positions in the sky change as the year goes on. So you'd be able to see some great illustrations on this page, and I apologize I can't zoom in even closer, but you can see how there are some different illustrations that show how our position looks to be changing. In that first example, you can see the constellation named Orion, how some parts of the year it's down really low, but then other parts of the year it rises in the sky and then it goes lower. But again, that's because the Earth is moving, not the constellation itself. So let's learn a little bit more. How do we use this book to help us find constellations in the night sky? In each of the sky pictures on the pages of the book, one constellation is printed in special glow-in-the-dark ink. Look at the diagram of the constellation. Can you go outside and find that constellation in the starry sky? To see if you were correct, you can hold the picture under a bright light, then take the book into a dark room. So first, you would go to a constellation that you want to find. So I'm going to use this as an example. Ursa Major, which is also the Big Dipper. The first thing you would do is hold the book under a very bright light. Now, there are a lot of stars on this page, but you're looking for a group, and we're going to read a little bit more about it. But first, you show the book under a really bright light, and then you go into a really dark place. So like me, I'm going to put this underneath my bed and see if I can find the constellation glowing. So remember, to check if you're correct, you hold the picture under a bright light, then take the book to a dark room or a dark place, like under your bed or in your closet. The stars of the constellation will glow so that you can see what the constellation looks like and where it is in the night sky. So before you even go outside to start looking for the constellation in the sky, first you use the maps inside the book. Then, when you're ready to go stargazing outside, you will enjoy stargazing on most nights when the sky is very clear, which has been a little bit challenging these last few weeks because we've had so much rain and clouds in our sky. But you want the sky to be as clear as possible and no moon. Ooh, why do you think it would be the best conditions to stargaze when there's no moon? Yeah, the moon provides light, and the more light that's available, the harder it can be to find constellations. Before you go out, choose one constellation from the pages of the book to try the activity to learn its shape. You may want to take the book along with you outside and a flashlight when you go stargazing. It's easy to find the constellations in the sky when you know their shapes and where to look for them. When you see a constellation for the first time, you may be surprised how big it is and how much it looks like the shape in your book. Once you learn to find a constellation in the sky, you'll be able to find it again and again. But remember, you won't be able to find all the constellations all the time. This book includes some winter, spring, summer, and autumn constellations. And then also in your camper box, you've got a telescope to help you look as well. So let's focus first on year-round constellations that no matter what season it is, you should be able to go out and find these constellations. Ursa Major and the Big Dipper. So in your book, you're going to notice that there is a full page dedicated to this constellation and a full page map as well. The story of Ursa Major, which means the Great Bear. Hera, the queen of the gods, was very jealous of a beautiful young woman named Castillo. Hera plotted to hurt Castillo, but Zeus, the king of gods, changed Castillo into a bear to keep her safe. So what you can notice, and I'm going to try my best to show it, but it might not work. Nope, it isn't going to work. I'm so sorry, friends. I tried to find this book online so I could zoom in and show you the pictures, and it just didn't work out. No one has really taken photographs of this book, so I'm going to need you to look inside your book to follow along with me. But Ursa Major is going to look like a bear. Remember, we learned earlier in the book that many constellations were named as animals. So in this case, it's a bear. The Great Dipper is at the back of the bear. The constellation Ursa Major and the Big Dipper. Ursa Major is made up of many stars, and it is not easy to find the whole constellation. I'll be honest, I've actually never been able to find Ursa Major myself, but maybe with the right tools, you would be able to do that. Ursa Major is important to beginning stargazers, however, because it contains one of the most visible star groups in the sky, the Big Dipper. Now, I have been able to find this constellation many times, and I'm confident that you will be able to. The Big Dipper is made up of 7 stars that seem to form the shape of a ladle or a dipper. If you take your hand like this, and you could pretend like you're dipping in and scooping out water, that's the shape that you're looking for, like a dipper. The 3 stars that form the handle of the dipper also form the long tail of the Great Bear. The picture shows the Big Dipper's 7 stars connected by imaginary lines to make the shape of the dipper. Important note for beginning stargazers: you will not see the lines in the sky. You're only going to see the stars, and you use your imagination to connect the stars like you do when you connect the dots in a book. The Big Dipper is one of the easiest star groups to recognize, but its position in the sky changes according to the season of the year. Before you go outside to look for the Big Dipper, find the northern sky map for the season of the year that you're in. Right now, it's summer. Find the Big Dipper on the sky map and look at its position. Is the Big Dipper high or low in the sky? Does the handle point down or up? So let's take a peek at that map in the back of our book. And I can see the Big Dipper is right here. So I know that when I go outside, I would need to look in the northern sky since the season is summer, and I would be looking for the Big Dipper with the handle at the top. So one of the first things I might do would be to look for this 4 stars that make that shape that's similar to a trapezoid, and then look up for the long handle. So you should be able to go out and use your tools to see if you can find the Big Dipper tonight. You've got many more pages to explore in your book, but remember, if you're going out to be a stargazer this week during camp, you want to focus on the constellations that can be seen in the summer sky. So when you're looking in your book, those constellations would be the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, and then you can see inside your book the constellations that you'll find in the summer. The background of the pages is a light purple, pinkish color. I cannot wait to see how you are exploring all of the stars around you. Hopefully, if it's cloudy outside or if you can't get away from the city lights, you can at least become a beginning stargazer by being able to recognize constellations in your map, in your book. Have so much fun as you learn more about space.